What are my rights if I think that my dentist has messed up my mouth? Find out next on Practical Law. Stay tuned. Practical Law. I'm your host, family law attorney Henry Gornbein, and also a partner in the full-service law firm of Lippitt O'Keefe Gornbein. Practical Law is also the official show of the Oakland County Bar Association. Today on Practical Law, I'm pleased to welcome as my guest Robert Gittleman, who is one of the leading experts in dental malpractice in the entire country. Robert, welcome to Practical Law.
Thank you.
Why don't you first of all tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and your background?
I am an attorney who specializes in dental malpractice. I mostly represent victims of malpractice. On the other side, I represent dentists who have problems, but it's basically for victims. And I've been doing this for almost 50 years, about 40 years on behalf of the dental malpractice.
How did you get involved in it? Because I think you started out doing general negligence and malpractice, and then it evolved in some way.
When I was in law school, I had the honor to be invited to be an editor of what they call the Law Review, which is a peer-reviewed journal that is submitted to the general legal population. And as an editor, I got very involved on medical malpractice articles and editing and writing. When I finished up my editorship, I was deeply involved in it, and I took a strong interest in it, and I decided that I would be involved in medical malpractice because I've been a firm believer my whole life where there is a wrong, there should be a right to remedy the wrong. After I got involved in medical malpractice, I realized what a broad area it was.
It's very broad.
And I decided I have to specialize to be a good lawyer. So I decided to specialize in the oral cavity. And of course, the oral cavity is basically involving dental, oral surgery, orthodontics, things of that nature.
You see all kinds of issues. What are the major types of dental malpractice cases that you see?
The worst are patients who have oral cancer that goes undiagnosed for a long time by the general dentist. The general dentist thinks it's just a lesion or a sore. They do adjustments to teeth. They give them salve. And while that's happening, the undiagnosed cancer is encroaching, and it leads to metastasis, and oftentimes it causes death. That's very preventable. Or oftentimes it causes a need for major revision surgery where the patients lose their tongue or their jaw or their bone, etc. Those are the worst. Additional types of malpractice are dentists who are doing injections to freeze the patient up, to numb the patient, and they misdirect the needle into a vital nerve that causes loss of taste, loss of sensation, can't feel your tongue, can't speak, can't feel your lips. Other areas of malpractice that involve dentists are allowing the patient who's a long-term patient to develop first gingivitis, which is light gum disease, then moderate gum disease that turns into severe periodontitis. And once you get periodontitis, it causes loss of teeth and it causes infections, requires surgery. Other types of malpractice are causing destruction of the roots or the teeth by orthodontics. Many general dentists now provide orthodontics.
Should they?
It's not for me to say should they or shouldn't they, because when a dentist is licensed by the state of Michigan, he can do anything he wants. Do I agree with that? No.
I always think of orthodontists and periodontists and others as specially trained who've done more than the general dentistry.
You are 100% correct. They are specialties, but general dentists are not prevented from practicing anywhere they want. They're only restricted by their own ethics, number one, their own ability, number two, and their own training and clinical practice. But many of them go beyond their capabilities because they want to pay their rent. It's that simple. And when they do it, they get in trouble. When the specialist should be treating the people, and the best example is braces. Orthodontists are specialists, they should be doing it.
Bob, why don't you take our viewers through kind of a situation. Let's say I come in with a complaint against a dentist. What happens when they walk into your office?
Before they walk in, I screen them over the phone because I got many, many calls.
Do you personally do it, or do you have associates who do it?
I do 95% because if an associate does it, I have to review it anyway. Plus, I like personal contact with the potential client. I think it's only fair if they're calling, they should get to speak with me. So I first talk to them over the phone. If I think there's something I could help them with, I have them get me the pertinent dental, medical, hospital records. I have them bring them to me, and then I evaluate them while they're with me. If I think there's something there, then I investigate it further, and once I investigate it further and feel that there's definitely malpractice, then I file a legal document called the Notice of Intent to File Claim involving the offending dentist or dentists, and they're required to answer the Notice of Intent to File Claim and send me their charts. Once they do that, if I still feel there's a basis to do a claim, after I review everything, then I contact their attorney or their insurance company, try to negotiate a settlement. If we cannot negotiate a settlement, I file the claim in the appropriate circuit court for the state of Michigan, depending on where the doctor is practicing medicine.
Now, isn't there a 2-year statute of limitations for?
There's a general 2-year statute of limitations from the date of the malpractice, with many exceptions. And suffice to say, there's many exceptions, including if you're a minor, including if there's fraudulent concealment of the defect that was created. And a good example of that would be a doctor breaks off an instrument in somebody's bone or jaw, hides it from the patient, sutures them up, they don't know about it, and a year or 2 years or 3 years later, they get a massive cyst or they get a massive infection, and they first find out about it. So in those type of situations, the statute of limitations does not apply because of the concealment. And there's other exceptions, but generally, yes, 2 years.
You recently got, I think, the largest dental malpractice verdict in Michigan?
The very largest I ever got was several years ago in an undiagnosed cancer case that was well over $15 million. The one you're referring to was last week, and that occurred in the Wayne County Circuit Court. That involved a misplaced needle injuring a nerve that gives sensory perception to the lip, the chin, and the gums, and that verdict was for $250,000, and that was the largest verdict, to my knowledge, in the state of Michigan for that kind of an injury. That was just last week.
Why don't you tell us about that case?
Okay.
First of all, were there any attempts to settle it?
I always attempt to settle because it saves my client money, number one. It lets them get their money, their compensation sooner. It takes away the uncertainty of waiting and the aggravation of waiting. So I always try to settle on behalf of my clients mental, emotional, and economic benefit. Unfortunately, the dental insurance industry has a very recalcitrant attitude, and they have an attitude of dollars and cents versus right versus wrong. So even though I try, this is the best example of me trying. There was not one dime offered. They made me file a lawsuit. They made numerous motions in the court to try to dismiss, to try to reduce, to try to indicate everything I'm doing is wrong. When we went to the jury, which was a week ago, they were still not offering a dime. And we tried the case for 3 days, and the case involved a general dentist doing a crown on a lower right molar tooth. Before he did the crown, he froze the patient up. He numbed the patient with what's called a mandibular block, where they inject the needle in the lower jaw to numb the nerves. That's supposed to take 2 to 3 hours before it wears off. In this case, he misdirected the needle into the nerve. This nerve goes up to the brain, and he injected the anesthetic solution into the nerve. He blew out the nerve, he shredded the nerve, he destroyed the nerve fibers, so the nerve can never regenerate again. And as a result, the young lady has total numbness of one half of her chin, one half of her lip, and one half of her gums. Permanent for life. Terrible injury. All preventable, 100% preventable.
So what was their defense?
Their defense was what they call, in fact, this is their defense in all the cases, quote, accepted complication of treatment, end quote. They have these people sign these long informed consent forms. They walk into the office knowing they won't read them, and they have a little blurb in there, you may have a nerve injury, very, very rare, but maybe. But the bottom line is, no patient can give any doctor, any dentist, any hospital, any professional informed consent for negligence. You can only give informed consent for a true accepted complication of treatment. And a good example of that would be if they took you or me after an accident into the hospital and our faces were all broken up and they say you might have nerve injury, that we know. But when you get a perfectly healthy, normal anatomy, normal nerves, there's no excuse for a dentist to misdirect the needle into the normal anatomy, causing the permanent injury. So there's no informed consent there, but that's always their defense, accept the complication. And of course the juries don't buy it because it's not true.
So you'd think they'd learn.
No, that doesn't happen. As I said, dollars and cents.
I'm curious about something. And in many areas, and I'm thinking of in legal malpractice, what's common now is carriers have a policy where, let's say there's $1 million coverage, hypothetically. The coverage also says that the defense attorney fees count against $1 million. So if you're negotiating a settlement, the defense attorneys will eat up as much as they can. So when you get to a settlement, they'll say, well, there's only $600,000 left. The rest has been paid in defense attorney fees. Is that similar in the dental malpractice area as well?
No, in the dental malpractice area, there's usually a maximum $1 million coverage, and the attorney fees are completely separate, paid separately by the insurance company. It has nothing to do with the $1 million coverage.
It's interesting. You had this huge verdict that you mentioned earlier. Tell us about that case.
That was a case of a general dentist treating a patient over a long period of time. The patient had a discomfort in her lower jaw. They did what's called an occlusal adjustment. They ground down a piece of the tooth. Then the discomfort turned into a lesion or cyst. They still did nothing other than a salve or adjusting of teeth. This went on for months. Then finally the patient got referred to an oral surgeon. The oral surgeon did nothing except bill Blue Cross for months and months of conservative treatments. and the standard of care required a biopsy to rule out cancer since this lesion, this cyst, persisted over weeks and months.
And that was never done?
It was not done for 6 months. By the time it was done, the cancer had infiltrated, had metastasized throughout the jaw. And as a result, the patient had multiple surgeries where about 40% of her jaw was literally cut out. And I mean literally, as well as a big portion of her tongue. And she's permanently maimed, permanent nerve damage, permanent deformities, permanent dysfunctions, lifetime of grief. So the jury looked at it and they realized what a terrible situation it was, waiting months and months and months between 2 different dentists, and they made this large award of over $15 million.
Was that collectible?
Oh, it's always collectible, but we have a cap, don't forget. So yes, it's collectible, but our state legislator in his wisdom made victims, additional victims, by reducing the amount of compensation because of the medical insurance lobby.
I don't know, they're still fighting that, trying to change that as we speak.
And I hope that it happens because victims deserve to be compensated adequately. That's for another day, though.
Bob, what do you attribute your success to?
I attribute my success. What a great question. Dedication, study, knowing more than the doctor knows, having compassion for my clients, not reducing the value of a case, making sure that the right is wronged on behalf of the community, not just the patient, because if we have bad professionals out there and people don't do anything about it, it proliferates. So I think my success is because of my dedication to my law profession, to my clients, and to my constant review and study to keep myself multiple steps ahead of the doctors in the anatomy, in the proper procedures, and what standard of care requires, and what will happen if you don't follow standard of care.
Bob, you're known as a plaintiff's attorney, and now you're doing some defense. Do you
Correct.
find it hard to cross to the other side of the street?
You're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer.
Right.
And as lawyers, we defend and we represent those that need us. And there's all kinds of adjectives that I can say. Some say we're hired guns. Some say that we are representing one person, not the other. We care about the law. And whether I'm representing a dentist, a doctor, a patient, I care about the law. And if I'm following the principles of the law, I'm doing the mandate of my profession, because when you and I took an oath, it was to follow the law, uphold the law, and if a dentist needs help, I'm the first guy he should call. Absolutely.
What are some of the defense situations that you're dealing with now?
For instance, next week, I'll be defending a dentist. In fact, next Tuesday, I'll be defending a dentist who the patient has accused of doing shoddy restorative work. And in my humble opinion, the work he did, the treatment he did, was way above standard of care. And I feel that the patient has a monetary incentive in filing this claim. So I'm very happy to defend the dentist in court next week, knowing what he did was proper. And with my knowledge, I'm very convinced it will be successful on behalf of the dentist. There's all kinds of areas where I defend them. Sometimes it's where the insurance companies or the government makes an allegation that they are overbilling the dentist, or that they're cheating in their billing, or that they're doing procedures that are not proper. Other times that they're doing procedures not charted, that should be charted. Other times that they're doing procedures where the patient is injured. It goes on and on.
Bob, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to find, well, first of all, a general dentist, then perhaps a specialist for certain, needs, whether it's an orthodontist, et cetera?
The first thing to do is go to the licensing Licensing and Regulation Authority in Lansing. It's a website. And make sure that the potential dentist or specialist does not have any licensing complaints. That's very important. Next, go to the Better Business Bureau and see what their rating is. Next, if it's to a specialist, go to your primary care dentist and ask the primary care dentist who they recommend. Next, check the internet for the resume, the curriculum vitae of the particular dentist or specialist you're looking to have work done, and make sure that they're conversant in this particular area. And many of the specialists have peer-reviewed articles that they've authored or co-authored. So when you find that, you're getting closer and closer to somebody who's dedicated. And of course, the most important thing is go to the office, make sure it's a clean office, make sure it's a tidy office, make sure you have good communication with the dentist and you have confidence. And as far as general dentistry is concerned, a lot depends on what your ability to pay is, because you get what you pay for. And a lot depends on your insurance company, because some insurance companies restrict you to certain clinics only that are in the program. Others, like broad form Delta, let you go anywhere, and you can even check with Delta what they consider a competent dentist.
What do you find most rewarding about your specialty?
I daily satisfy the needs of the community we're in, and the community for me is over 35 states I practice in.
You're in 35 states?
I have practiced in over 35 states, dental.
Do you have to get special, do you have to have co-counsel, or how do you do it?
The legal term is pro hoc vici. That means in Latin that we can come in, but we can only come in after we document the fact that we are qualified to do it in our field. And in certain states, I've been welcomed by judges many times because they know my expertise will make the trial go faster, more expedient, and hopefully a good outcome. And I always have to have a co-counsel with me to verify for me and vouch for me. So it has to be a licensed attorney in the state that verifies who I am and that will be practicing along with me on the case.
Do you try many cases out of state?
I have tried cases multiple times in Florida, the Carolinas, Texas, Iowa, many places, California.
Because of your national expertise, and I know you lecture to dental groups and to other societies on a regular basis, doesn't your name on a case bring a lot of settlements?
Absolutely. That's why I'm the guy to go to. No question. The carriers keep a computer list of who we are, what we do, what our results are, how good our results are. The defense lawyers have the same thing. They know if I'm on the case, they're going to have to not just dot their I's, but cross their T's, make sure everything is perfect, versus someone who's just learning the first time when a client walks into his office. Expertise is expertise.
Well, doesn't that also mean that you versus another plaintiff's attorney are going to be able to probably maximize a settlement and perhaps get more dollars?
The vast majority of my practice comes from referrals of other plaintiff attorneys where a client walks in, they give me the information, and they have the client sign up with me. The vast majority.
So it makes sense. I mean, you're the go-to person, so a lot of these law firms are going to send you a lot of business.
Yeah, it makes their client happy, it makes them happy, of course.
What frustrations do you have about this area of the law?
The frustration is the recalcitrant, rotten attitude of the insurance industry involving dental defenses where they don't think of the injury, they don't think of the wrong, they don't think of the grief, they don't think of the aggravation, they don't think of the dysfunction, they don't think of the reduction of the quality of life, they don't think of the reduction where the people cannot taste food, look in the mirror, et cetera, and all they worry about is reducing the amount of fair compensation the patient is entitled to, and they do everything they can to beat up the patient. That's my frustration.
If you could make any changes in the system of dental malpractice, what would you do?
The first thing I do is take the so-called medical malpractice cap and throw it in the garbage. It's unjust, it's unfair, it shouldn't be there. In many states it's not, and in Michigan it's there because of the strong insurance lobby, along with the medical profession, browbeating the legislator by making donations.
I mean, we're one of the worst states for plaintiffs' negligence malpractice, isn't that correct?
What do you mean worst?
Michigan.
When you say worst, what do you mean?
Worst as far as plaintiffs. I mean, when you and I started, there were no caps, there were no limits.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have so many restrictions now, Henry, so many. We have not just a cap, we have a slew of procedural pitfalls that if we don't follow to the T, the client loses out. We have a slew of rules now we didn't have 20, 30, 40 years ago, all put in by the insurance lobby to prevent victims from getting their proper day in court and their proper compensation. Absolutely.
Critical. And, you know, you're a warrior and you've done a lot. We're down to 1 minute, so what I'd like to do is have you share some final thoughts about this fascinating and important topic before we sign off, Bob.
Okay. If I'm speaking to your audience, my most important thing I can tell you, go to the dentist every 6 months, get your teeth cleaned, get checked up. Secondly, if you have any lesions, sores in your mouth that don't heal within 12, 15, 20 days, get to a competent dentist to make sure that you don't have something that can cause you grievous injury. And if you do have a problem and that's not being resolved, then you contact your local attorney because you're entitled to just compensation.
And again, if you're concerned, get a second opinion as far as dentists. Bob Gittleman, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Practical Law. We're out of time. And I want to thank you for watching Practical Law.